Hello and welcome back to ShatterCast. Before we get started today, Derek, I just had a quick question for you. You know, when Nintendo released the DS, they had sort of a powered down version of the DS with less features, and it was called the DS Lite. I really think Nintendo missed an opportunity to call the Lite version of the Switch the Nintendo Lite Switch.
Don't laugh at that, Russ. That's ridiculous.
That Why is it the Nintendo Switch Lite instead of the Lite Switch? I don't know. It was a major missed opportunity.
Amen.
And thank you for sticking around after that terrible joke about Nintendo Switches. Those are part of what we're going to talk about today. We're also going to be talking about the Steam Deck, Nintendo Switch. I'm messing up all my words, so right now I'm just going to introduce you to a friend of mine who is below my face right now. His name is Russell. Russell, tell the audience about yourself and welcome for your first episode of ShatterCast.
Hi, everybody. I'm Russell, whatever you want to call me. I met Derek back in February. We work for the same organization, Reliant, which helps Derek out to do Shattered Studios and stuff like that. And in that time, we just connected really well over things like video games, comic books, and everything that Disney owns, which seems to be everything these days.
Most things.
And so just through that, I kind of invited myself a few months back. I was like, hey, keep me in mind if you ever talk about a few things. And one of those things was the Switch. I'm a big Nintendo guy. And, I'm excited to talk about that and the other things. I live in Illinois, and my social security number is...
Wait, Russ, no, don't do it.
That was a joke. You weren't supposed to say it.
Okay,
well, Russ, it's great to have you. Russell, you said you go by anything, so I'm going to call you Russo brother number 3.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Great.
And so if you are someone who is interested in anything revolving around handheld consoles, Nintendo, Steam, PC games, or Mario, you probably have noticed in the last few weeks there's been a bit of a buzz as different things were announced. I finally got my hands on the Nintendo Switch in June of 2021, about 2 weeks before they announced the new version of the Switch. I was like, are you kidding me? They've been as hard to find as graphics cards I've found in the last year and a half. But I finally got my hands on it, no pun intended, and I love it. The Switch is amazing. And so we want to talk today about the announcement that they had for the new Switch with the OLED screen. And then also the big announcement that came in July from Steam themselves, as they decided that their first main foray into console gaming, the Steam machine, didn't go over too well. But no one's really challenged the Nintendo Switch, which has been out for 4 years. 4 years, guys. And there hasn't been a major console competitor to the Switch since then. And so the Steam has answered that call with the Steam Deck. I want to get some different opinions on those things. We'll start with the Switch. I was looking at the specs the other day. Not a lot has changed between the Switch and the OLED version. It's just a better screen, which is to say, I mean, OLED is just pretty popular panel-wise when it comes to computer monitors, and it's gaining in popularity. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think that updating the screen is enough? I mean, to be fair, it's the majority of the console is a screen, so it's technically a big upgrade. But do you guys think that this is enough of an upgrade to really justify a new generation of console?
I think that's an interesting question. I don't know how much they intended this, but can we talk about the savage marketing move? So,
oh no.
Up for sales.
Oh, Derek, you froze a little bit. All we heard was you say the savage marketing move, and then your ISP was pretty savage to you and just
Pause. All right.
Lay it for us again.
Awesome. Great question. Before we get there, can we talk about the savage marketing move that as soon as the Switch OLED, I think we're calling it, went up for sale, Steam Deck announced that they have a Steam Deck, and everyone's like, is this direct competition or not? So we talk a little bit more about that. For me, is it enough to upgrade? I don't think so. I think a lot of people were looking for like a Switch Pro where they would update a lot of like maybe the graphics card or at least a processor to just update the screen and charge, you know, $50 more. In all fairness, they updated the dock as well, so that's good. I don't know. I think it left a few people wanting. I don't have a Switch yet, and so I was waiting around to see if they would do a Switch Pro and to get the kind of just upgraded screen. I'm not sure if I need that or not. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think that's a great point that you said there. And one thing that I want to go ahead and give to the audience, in case you're not as familiar with some of these terms, the OLED screen, it's technically OLED because it stands for organic LED, and LED is a light most of us are familiar with. Light emitting diode. Woohoo, fancy words. So in OLED screen is an LED screen, but the O stands for organic, and it's just a different process by which it produces a light. It's supposed to be higher quality, better color contrasts, better motion. And so a lot of like games that you were playing on the Switch, like you could play Fortnite and some of the Call of Duty stuff, like you actually play first-person shooters on the Switch, those would ostensibly benefit from having an OLED screen because it would be more reliable in fast-paced gaming. So that is a legitimate bonus. So I wanted to throw that out there for those of you who don't know why they would even bother changing to an OLED screen and what does that even mean. So sorry to cut you off, Hannah. Feel free to jump back in.
Well, it's just when I think about Nintendo compared to other companies like with consoles with PlayStation and Xbox, their new games, their new consoles, that kind of thing, usually they'll upgrade a feature, or instead of just saying, hey, this has better graphics or this has better HD or whatever. I mean, that's kind of the same thing, but you get what I'm trying to say. And because like I think about the Wii, well, okay, they added the Wii Fit, and then they keep adding different things to the actual features of the console. And I think we were kind of expecting something a little more substantial.
True. That is their track record. Yeah, I mean, when the Wii came out, because it used motion capture, and that was a massive jump in console technology, and Nintendo kind of had a habit of not releasing something unless there was a really big change. I mean, the Switch was massive.
Yeah, the Switch is a great idea, and it really changed the way that the console is used.
Yep.
So I think even with the Wii being the main console at the time, the Wii Fit and that platform you step onto was a brand new thing, brand new feature. And right now, when we're looking at the OLED for the Switch, it doesn't seem like this upgrade is that much of an upgrade.
Yeah, it's kind of what you expect from like Microsoft and Sony with the Xbox and the PS4. There's a new generation, so they can sell a bunch of new consoles with slightly better specs, but not as huge of a change as we come to expect from Nintendo. And I like the point that you were making about the Wii and the Wii Fit and Nintendo Switch. I still remember when the first teaser was released about the Nintendo Switch, and it was a couple of kids, they were playing, and it looked like they had a controller, and they were playing Mario Kart, or maybe it was Super Smash, I don't remember, on the screen, on the TV, and then their parents are walking by, and dad's like, come on, we got to go. And they're like, okay. So they pause the game, walk over to the TV, grab the Switch out of the docking station, and leave. And I was like, wait, what? Like, mind blown. Like, that's amazing. Like, it's been a few years, but I just want people to understand how mind blowing that still is to me. Like, the Switch is still an amazing piece of technology. What about you, Russell?
Yeah, I think a lot of us because of PlayStation, Xbox, how they do their releases, I think it was some missed expectations. People were kind of hoping to go, they were hoping that'd be a PS4 to PS5 jump.
Yeah.
And I think Nintendo is just very firmly, they're comfortable within this Switch ecosystem. So this felt more like just like when Apple goes from the 6 to the 6S. This wasn't the next phone. It was just kind of tweaking the handheld. But I think for me, the part where I felt most let down was I love my Switch. It's awesome. It's held up great. I got one in 2018, and it's just a really sturdy console. But it lags like crazy. It has lag issues, even with its Nintendo proprietary games, like even Zelda, even Mario. And I just wish with the OLED that they would have emphasized processing a little bit more so that we wouldn't have the lag issues, because graphics are whatever. But for me, when you're playing a game like Hyrule Warriors and there's just so many enemies on there and the screen starts to kind of glitch and stutter. I don't know. That's the one downside, and it felt like Switch missed or Nintendo missed an opportunity to address that.
And I think that's the point. I think a lot of people weren't expecting the Switch 2 yet. The Switch is so well liked and it's doing so well. So I don't think we were expecting a new console. But to Russell's point, I remember the first generation of the Switch, when they went to the second generation, it had an increased battery life. And everyone was like, oh, this is great. And that was an actual thing that people liked. Now you're just upgrading the screen. Like, sure, upgrade the screen, but as Russell's saying, upgrade the processor while you're at it. Like, do a little bit more that's worth the $50 and make that the flagship of the Switch. So
it almost feels like their research department and their marketing department found out that Steam was getting ready to drop something, so they decided, oh, we need to come out with a new version of this to compete with Steam.
I like that hand.
Probably not far from the truth, honestly.
That Nintendo was the sneaky one.
Well, there was it's tangentially related, and it was about like PC and Mac way back in the 80s and 90s. There was a movie that like half movie, half documentary style thing about like the big technology PC boom, and there was just this part where they would show how even though they were rivals, you'd get like Steve Jobs over in Microsoft and you'd get Bill Gates over in Apple, and they'd just be walking around and like they'd be walking, like Bill Gates would go to Apple and be with Steve Jobs, and he'd be showing them some stuff, and Bill Gates would be like, oh, that's really interesting. It's kind of cool that you guys thought of that. And then like when they get back, they're like, this is what we have to do, and it's just this constant back and forth of stealing ideas from each other for decades. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Hannah's not far from the truth.
Yeah, I feel kind of dumb now. Like that hadn't even crossed my mind that Nintendo might have been the aggressor. Derek's been saying like, oh, is Nintendo worried? Is Nintendo, and maybe all along Steam's worried. They're like, oh gosh, what happened?
Well, it's like it just came to me right now because we were talking about how it's really not that much of an improvement.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they were rushing it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great.
That's fair. It's one of the things like we even mentioned earlier, like, you had the Xbox One and the One S and the One X and all of that. They didn't leave the one moniker, kind of like in game development, you think of like a title update where you go from version 1 to version 2, but there's 1,000 version 1 point somethings in between there. And that's kind of what we've been getting in consoles from Sony and Microsoft for a long time, but not what we're getting from Nintendo. Nintendo's always been like this thing and then a brand new thing and then a brand new thing, whereas this feels much more like a minor update instead of a title update, I think is kind of a good way to think about what our experience has been. So let's shift a little bit from just talking about the Switch to talking about the Steam Deck. What's some of the things that you guys think about the Steam Deck, and good thoughts, bad thoughts? Are you looking forward to it? What are your thoughts?
I think the Steam Deck is going to create a new audience for Steam, because you've got people like myself who aren't necessarily PC gamers, but when you have a new console or a new handheld device, then that's going to get those people who like handheld devices and consoles to get into those games that you normally would just find on PC.
Yeah, yes, and amen. I totally agree with that. I feel like I was thinking about in terms of bar of entry, and for me, like as a 34-year-old who doesn't have a lot of experience with PC gaming, and I think of like a 7-year-old, I feel like we're kind of on the same plane, me and the 7-year-old.
In more ways than one.
Yeah. And like Hannah was saying, like I just didn't have the time or mental capacity to like figure all that out. But now with Steam Deck, I'm like, oh man, this is totally meant for me. And I feel like I'm excited at the prospect of getting access to the library, because there's been so many games on Steam that I'm like, oh well, I just can't play that because I don't have a PC.
Yep.
Now, I can save up, $300-400 and get one. Or if I'm 7, beg my parents till they buy it for me. And I think it's great. I totally agree with that, and I'm excited for the lower bar of entry to PC gaming.
Well, in addition to that, we don't know how much longer graphic cards and CPUs are going to be hard to get a hold of. So
Yeah.
you mentioned not having a gaming PC. It may be as simple as accessibility, and whereas what I was more so getting at was like, oh, I've never been interested in PC gaming before. So, now you can have access to it in a different way.
I agree with that. I think the Steam Deck opens up a whole world of possibilities for just what you guys said. And let me be clear, I don't think Nintendo's going anywhere. Nintendo doesn't need a shake in its boots. Nintendo, what it has going for is its library, and that's not going. Zelda, Mario, people are diehard Nintendo. So
People will always buy the next system that allows them to continue playing the newest Zelda games and Mario games.
Yeah, nostalgia is a huge selling point.
And I think Nintendo is a good family console. They come out with good family consoles because, again, because it's its portability, and usually it's a little cheaper. And I think with the Switch Lite, it might still continue to operate that market. What I think the Steam Deck does is, as you guys said, opening up to kind of new PC gamers, but also people like myself who have been a victim of Steam summer sales. I blame Steam, and have tons of games in our library and just never play it because we're running to and fro. I think that's amazing. And then Steam is marketing, at least in some ways, to some higher end PC gamers as well. And we were talking about this earlier. There are some third-party games that you can play on the Switch, like The Witcher 3 or I think maybe Control or Skyrim, I think we're talking about, that you can play now on Steam, and it's going to be a better experience with the graphics, with the processor. Some reviewers have been playing it, and they said like medium specs for the PC has actually been working on the Steam Deck, the preview copy. So I think some high-end gamers might love the ability to take some of their favorite PC games on the road with them, which is what we see people do with the Steam as well.
Yeah, I think too, like in the sport gaming world, there isn't an adequate handheld for the 2K series and the EA Sports. Like the prospect of knowing that I can maybe play Madden or NBA 2K or PGA Golf on a handheld that won't have lag and will like not have endless load times is just so exciting to me. And if you think about how much athletes are on buses and they need that portability, like how many high school football players are going to be getting their Steam Deck so they can play Madden between the traveling schedule.
You guys make good points. And what's funny is when we were doing our sort of our, I can't remember the
production
word.
meeting.
Our little powwow before we record.
Pre-meeting.
The thing you do before you film the podcast.
Yeah, that thing. The debrief before the fact. The briefing, I guess. When we were having that pre-production talk, there we go. One of the things that I was saying is like I have no interest in a Steam Deck. I got a Switch. I can play the games I want to play on Switch, but I have a gaming computer that I built, and that's what why would I choose to play my games at lower resolution and quality when I can just play them on my computer? However, feel like you called me out, Derek, because I just pulled up Steam. I have 185 games in my Steam library, and I have many friends that have much more than that. I have friends that have over 1,000 games because of Steam Summer Sale, because of like Humble Bundle, which I think now is called Fanatical or something. You know, so you can end up getting like 20 games for like $1, you know, randomly.
Wow.
And so the ability to actually try some of those games that I've just never bothered trying, that's actually very tempting. So stop tempting me to spend all my money, Derek.
Yeah.
Sorry,
stop,
my
Derek.
bad. My bad.
Yeah, stop,
one
Derek.
One
Hashtag
other thing.
stop Derek. Say it in the comments if you're with us.
That won't be the first time that trends. One other thing we haven't mentioned yet, the Steam, Valve's being very open with the Steam system, right? And so it's a full PC. So it runs on Linux, but you can put Windows on it. You can put your Epic Game Store or your Ubisoft store. Not sure why you want to. You can put all these other stores. I'm just joking.
If it's a stable kernel of Linux, I don't know why you would want to put Windows on it either.
You can put all these other gaming stores that are PC compatible on this machine and take it with you. Yeah. So just that opens up possibilities that is pretty interesting. And I'm curious what people will do with that. So,
can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I just keep thinking about like in terms of the console wars. You know, I grew up in the 90s when Sega and Nintendo were like, it was bitter, right? Bitter rivalry. But I just keep wondering, like when the Steam Deck got announced, do you guys think any of the other big three companies, Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo, like, do you think they cared at all, or were they just like, whatever, this won't affect us?
Good question.
I just read an article about Phil Spencer of Xbox. He's actually excited about the Steam Deck because, again, we talked about this a couple times with PlayStation and Xbox. Microsoft is doing a really interesting strategy because a lot of their games that used to be exclusive to the console are now, you can now play it on Xbox or on the PC or on mobile because they're doing more cloud stuff. And so to have a machine like the Steam Deck, if Microsoft doesn't make one of their own, they might actually support the Steam Deck because more people can access their games. So
I think that would be a wise decision because, you know, I remember 15 years ago, the console that you got when the new consoles came out was almost universally decided on which exclusives did you want to play, or you just bought both, right? Like I never decided between Xbox 360 or PS3 because one had slightly better specs than the other, because almost never did they actually. It was a toss up. But it was, okay, do I want to play God of War, Gears of War, or whatever, or do I want to play like Metal Gear Solid and Uncharted, which are on
Halo.
PlayStation, or Halo on the Xbox? And so, you know, those were the decisions you had to make, and more those exclusives are going away. And I think that, you know, Xbox, he's making a great point. I hope he's excited about the Steam Deck, and I hope that they realize that they're going to get a lot more goodwill from gamers if they're just open with this stuff and they just share and they're just, you know, creating content that we love and enjoy without forcing us to buy everybody's new console to play a game that we want to play. I think you get a lot more goodwill. And when you have goodwill with consumers, guess what?
Good money.
They spend the money. Or they just stop. If you don't have goodwill, they just stop consuming your product.
Yeah. No money.
Crazy idea, right? Look at that.
It makes me think, and Russell, you had mentioned this before, it makes me think of this. I think the Nintendo Switch is like the Apple iPhones of the world. They have a really tight ecosystem, but you have to play their game. Steam Deck is coming out. They're kind of the Androids of the world. Almost anyone can have at it. That's both positive and negative. We'll see what happens.
But it won't be designed
they're playing two different games here. So
I'm a confusing person because I love iPhone, but I hate Macs. So I'm in a really weird spot where I hate the Android phones, but what you say makes perfect sense, and I agree with you. So I don't know how to feel about all this right now.
I will say that Android phones have improved significantly over the years.
That's what you say, but I'm unwilling to find out.
I was just going to note real fast, and we can move on. I believe 2 or 3 times in this podcast alone, John has agreed with me. You guys all make a note of that.
That's true. It doesn't usually happen that way. I think that's why you picked me to host, was so that we can always argue. But yeah, you're making good points today, Derek.
I think what's interesting, going back to that idea of the console war, the rivalry, is that, and to use a church word, I feel like video gaming culture has gotten a bit more ecumenical over the
Ooh,
past.
that's like a real church word too.
Yeah.
That's like an
Define that for our
SAT
audience,
church
bro.
word.
Yeah, who
Okay.
can define that
All
for
right.
our audience?
We're gonna be
Hashtag
doing
stop
altar
Derek,
calls
hashtag
next.
ecumenical.
All right,
Ecumenical is
John,
like-
use your degree and define that
Yeah,
word.
Russell said it. He's defining it.
Okay, it's like when churches from different denominations or even different faith backgrounds will get together and try to, fight for a certain cause, like fight poverty or fight injustice or this or that. So that's called an ecumenical movement.
Yeah.
It's
the idea that we're stronger together.
Yeah.
and
Despite our differences, we can unite over a shared purpose.
Exactly.
And I feel like, and maybe it's just, the generations kind of evolving, but I feel like gamers aren't as caught up in the like, I'm a Nintendo guy, I'm an Xbox guy, I'm a PlayStation guy.
Well, don't speak for
Yes,
the PC
unless
people.
you're talking about the PC gamers, because the PC gamers are so
Okay.
very, very hard about how much better they are than everyone else.
Okay.
I am one,
Interesting.
so I can say that.
But the
Okay.
consoles, yeah.
But the consoles,
So-
consoles are much better with each other.
So I wonder if like Steam Deck will contribute to that. And again, like maybe all the PC gamers are going to be annoyed that like, noobs like me are now getting into it.
Yes, they will. I assure you.
In
they
our
will.
tiny
And
screens.
it's dumb that they will, but yes,
This is great.
It's
But-
true. It's true of any hobby. Any hobby that has been around for a long time. There are some people who are going to be annoyed when new people come on board because they don't realize that they need new people in order for the hobby to survive, right?
Yeah.
And the same is true of gaming. But what you're saying there is making a great point about how the console exclusivity and the fanboying and the bashing of the other side has it's lowered a little bit in the last 10, 15 years. It's not as bad as it used to be. And I think part of that is a product of there being less and less exclusives, because then there's less people staunchly holding their ground, because what's the point of the banner you're waving? Because there's 2 games that you can play that I can't play. Oh no.
Yeah.
And so with that is this talk that we've kind of broached a few times now about open-handedness within the gaming community, right? And the Steam Deck being an opportunity for that to kind of infiltrate the PC gamers, right? Because I was joking, but I was also serious about how snobby PC gamers are, right? I'm a PC gamer. I'm not like a hashtag PC master race kind of guy, but there's a lot of those people out there that are like, PC is better than everything else. In my opinion, if you enjoy it, then it's good for you. There you go. And that's it. When it comes to gaming, it's fine. If you're an Xbox or a PlayStation or a PC guy, whatever. There was a long portion of my life where I got a console purely because it's the one that my brothers had, and they lived halfway across the world, and it was the only way that I can interact with them was to play games with them. So I didn't care what system I had. So, and I shared earlier that, when we start dropping exclusives and we look at being more open-handed, we generate goodwill with the consumers and they spend more money, and it's good for the hobby, it's good for the industry. So how, and you kind of started to touch on this, Russell, is how, as Christians and as a faith community, how can we also look at this topic of open-handedness? And I'll start with my first thought, and then I'll open it up to anyone who wants to share. What you were sharing there, Russell, I love that idea of like an ecumenical group, because so many denominations of Christianity, not all of the denominations who call themselves a denomination of Christianity, but the overwhelming majority of them believe in Jesus, believe in the fact that he was divine in nature, he was the Son of God, he was also man, and that he died for our sins and was resurrected 3 days later. They agree on all of that stuff. And spoiler alert, that's the salvation stuff. There's other things that they disagree on that doesn't actually affect whether or not you get to enter heaven.
Right.
It's the main thing. The main point is the Jesus stuff. And if they get the Jesus stuff, that's the most important thing. And so when we start to look at that, like, hey, a Baptist and a Methodist and a Presbyterian can work together, because all 3 of them, I know this is a little crazy, but all 3 of them are going to heaven. Okay, so, I know. So they can work together on earth for the greater good when they decide, hey, let's just work together. Let's be open-handed about this. It doesn't have to be my ministry. It doesn't have to be my thing. Let's just all partner together and see some good happen in this world, Mr. Frodo. All right.
I'm reminded of a church that is in the where we used to live in Oklahoma, and they have brochures for other churches in their lobby.
That's awesome.
Where they explain that, you know, this particular church may or may not be a good fit for you, but if it's not, we still want you to be plugged into a church somewhere. So here are other places that we know are a good community that you can go to. It's all still the body of Christ, and it's important for you to be plugged in somewhere.
Yeah, and I think that's like, for me, that's when gaming culture is at its best, when it's embracing the open source, it's embracing sharing, and it's embracing you know, not super tightly closed ecosystems. And Nintendo is great, but I do feel like that's the one area I wish they would kind of relax in some ways. And I get why they don't, but because I feel like the gospel is an open source thing. It's open to all, and we're all to be given access to it. And I think that's what's cool about kind of Steam Deck's philosophy right now, is that they're wanting to be more open and kind of a part of the larger gaming thing, and not just trying to carve out their specific niche. And I'm really curious to see how Sony and Microsoft kind of play ball with them in the future.
And I think that underscores, again, our faith point that we've been talking about. Again, just using gaming as an example, there's some times where competition makes gaming companies better. There's other times where it has impediments. And there's stuff like cross-play that more games are using that I think is great. Or again, as you guys mentioned, Steam being so open with their system is amazing. And that lack of competitiveness, I think, is going to do a lot of great stuff. And then as we talk about Christianity and stuff, there's a really cool passage in 1 Corinthians 3:5-9. I won't say the whole thing, but people are coming to Paul and they're like, I follow this leader, I follow this leader. And Paul's like, does that make any difference? It's not important. He uses the example of planting crops. And he's like, it doesn't matter who plants a crop or who waters it, it's God who makes it grow. And, you know, as long as we are doing things to see God move and to help other people, Paul's saying it doesn't matter who does what, just as long as we're working on the same team and seeing God's kingdom spread. And I think that's a good reminder for Christians. And I love what Hannah just shared about the church with the different brochures. So often in Christianity, we think this is my ministry or this is my church, and we refuse to help other people. I had a slight disagreement recently with someone in a church who I was trying to get help for someone, and he didn't understand at first why they should help this person because they didn't go to their congregation. And I'm like, this person's in need and you have the opportunity to meet that need. That is the gospel. Go and help them. And so I think people are often repulsed by Christianity when they see Christians fight amongst themselves. And I think they're drawn to the gospel, they're drawn to God when they see Christians work together from different backgrounds to try to see good done. And so I think the lack of competition in Christianity is something that needs to happen. And, you know, John and I have been meeting with a bunch of other people from, you know, like-minded ministries, and we're like, hey, how can we partner up and do more stuff to reach people online or do more gaming stuff? And I think that's what God calls us to do, instead of being, this is my thing, this is my ministry. No, it's God's ministry, it's God's church. How can we use that to help others?
Never thought that a console released by Steam would spur on such deep religious thought.
Amazing.
I love what everyone here has been saying. It's such a good reminder for us that the church is not supposed to compete with itself. You know, I love what you said there, Derek, is that it's not my ministry, right? That passage in that Paul wrote in Corinthians is very specific that it's God's, that God does it, that we are honored to be a part of it, but it will happen with or without us. So, like, I'm a preacher, but it's not my ministry. It's not my church. At no point is it mine, and God could take it away tomorrow. And that's him. That's his will. It's his ministry, not mine. I am just there in partnership with him. And I think that as Christians in every area, that's not just applicable in church ministry. It's applicable if you're a doctor, or if you work in retail, or if you're in education, or whatever industry you're in. You are still the hands, feet, mouth, and body of Christ. And you are still supposed to bring the light of Christ into every area that you live. But at the end of the day, recognize that it's not about you, and it's not about me. It's about Christ. And that's the main thing. That's the main point that somehow the release of the Steam Deck has reminded all of us that we're supposed to be open-handed with everything that we do, because it all belongs to God, and we're supposed to give it to him. The nice thing is that means when we succeed, it's God, and when things don't work out, it's God's will. And so there's some peace and some grace there, as well as we try to understand the life that we live in. It's a bit of a roller coaster at times, but it's a fun ride. It's a fun ride. It has a good ending. So we're gonna go ahead and give this segment a good ending and say what I always say: we love you, but more importantly, God loves you. Thank you for tuning in. We hope to see you next week. Take care, guys.
Despite having a 10-month-old, I bought PGA 2K21 and haven't looked at my child in 3 days.
Can we talk about the savage marketing move? So,
Oh no.
up for sales.
Oh, Derek, you froze a little bit. All we heard was you say the savage marketing move, and then your ISP was pretty savage to you and just.